I never thought my life would end up this way. If someone had told me years ago that I'd be sitting here telling the world how my own son saved me from the cruelty of a boss who had spent years grinding me down, I would have laughed. Not because it was impossible, but because I never believed anyone would step in for me. I've always been the kind of man who carried my burdens alone. I let people walk over me. I worked until my bones ached, and I swallowed every insult, every humiliation, because I thought that's what a man was supposed to do: provide, endure, survive. My name is Daniel, and for almost 2 decades I worked at a logistics company in the city. On paper it sounded respectable. I wasn't rich, but I made enough to put food on the table and keep the lights on. But behind the walls of that office, behind the buzzing fluorescent lights and endless paperwork, was a man who made every day a living nightmare. My boss, Leonard. Leonard was the kind of man who smelled weakness like a dog smells fear. He wasn't tall, he wasn't particularly strong, but he had this way of making you feel small, like no matter what you did, you'd never be good enough. He'd hover over my desk, tapping his fingers on the wood, asking why I was so slow, why my reports were sloppy, why I hadn't worked overtime again. And if he didn't like my answer, he'd laugh. Not a normal laugh, but one that dripped with contempt, the kind of laugh that told you he enjoyed watching you squirm. I learned to stay quiet. I told myself I could take it. After all, I had bills to pay. And at home I had a son who depended on me. His name is Michael. When his mother left us, he was only 6 at the time. I promised him I'd never abandon him. I promised him I'd give him a better life, no matter how hard it was. But promises are heavy things, and sometimes I wondered if I'd made one too big for my shoulders to carry. Michael grew up watching me work long hours, coming home late, exhausted, too tired to do much more than heat up leftovers and ask about his homework. I missed school plays, soccer games, even his birthdays sometimes. I told myself it was all for him, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. As he grew older, the distance between us widened. By the time he was in high school, he barely spoke to me. By the time he was in college, it felt like we were strangers sharing the same last name. Still, I loved him. I loved him more than life itself, but I didn't know how to show it anymore. Leonard must have sensed that weakness too, because he pushed harder. He'd call me the old mule, said I was too slow, too fat, too useless to keep up with the younger workers. Sometimes he'd say it in front of the whole team, and they'd laugh. Not because they wanted to, but because no one dared to stand up to him. He was the kind of boss who could fire you on a whim, and everyone knew it. I told myself to endure. Just a few more years, I thought. A few more years and I can retire. I can rest. I can finally have time for Michael, even if he doesn't want it anymore. But every day it got harder. My chest felt heavier, not just from the stress, but from the shame of being treated like a dog in front of everyone. It was around that time that I started noticing changes in Michael. He wasn't a kid anymore. He was a man now, tall, broad-shouldered, with a sharpness in his eyes that unsettled me. He'd come home late, sometimes not at all. When I asked where he'd been, he'd shrug, give me vague answers. Out with friends, studying, don't worry about it, Dad. But the clothes he wore, the watch on his wrist, the phone in his hand, they didn't come from studying. I knew that much. One night he came home with a bruise on his jaw. When I asked what happened, he just said, "Nothing I couldn't handle." His voice was calm, but there was something in it I didn't recognize. Confidence, or maybe something darker. I wanted to press, but the years of distance between us made me hesitate. I wasn't sure if I even had the right anymore. At work, Leonard's cruelty escalated. He found new ways to belittle me, sometimes making me redo reports for hours just to prove a point. One day he spilled his coffee on my desk and demanded I clean it up while he stood there smirking. My co-workers looked away, pretending not to see. I cleaned it in silence, swallowing my pride, my hands shaking with suppressed rage. That night when I came home, Michael was in the living room scrolling on his phone. He looked up, saw my slumped shoulders, the defeat in my eyes. "You let people treat you like that every day?" he asked suddenly. I froze. He'd never spoken to me like that before. "What are you talking about?" I muttered. "I've seen you, Dad. You come home beaten down, like someone's been kicking you all day. And don't tell me it's just the job. Nobody should have to live like that." His words cut deeper than Leonard's insults ever did. For years, I'd told myself I was enduring for him, that I was sacrificing so he could have a better future. But hearing my own son say he saw me as weak, it was unbearable. "I do what I have to do," I snapped, louder than I intended. "I put food on the table, I keep the lights on. That's what matters." Michael's eyes narrowed. "No, Dad. Respect matters too." We didn't speak for the rest of the night. I went to bed with his words echoing in my head, keeping me awake until dawn. The following week, Leonard crossed a line I didn't think he would. He called me into his office, slammed a stack of files on the desk, and accused me of making mistakes that weren't mine. When I tried to explain, he shouted over me, calling me useless, pathetic, a burden to the company. Then he leaned forward, sneering, and said, "Maybe if you weren't so busy stuffing your face every night, you'd actually get something done." The room spun. My hands clenched into fists, my face burned with shame. For a moment I thought I'd hit him, but then I saw the smug smile on his face, daring me to try. He wanted me to snap so he could fire me, so I didn't. I lowered my eyes, muttered an apology I didn't mean, and left his office. That night, Michael noticed. He always noticed. He asked again what happened, and I brushed him off, but he didn't let it go. "Who is he?" Michael demanded. "Who's doing this to you?" "Drop it, Michael," I said. "No, you're my father. I may not say it enough, but I don't like seeing you like this. Tell me his name." I refused, but something in my son's eyes told me he already knew, and that terrified me more than Leonard ever could. Because for the first time in years, I realized my son wasn't just drifting away, he was becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone who looked at me not with pity, but with the kind of resolve that promised action. And I had no idea just how far he'd go. The days after that argument with Michael felt heavier than usual. At work, Leonard seemed to sense that I was close to breaking. It was as if he fed off my weakness, like a predator testing its prey to see how much pain it could take before collapsing. Every morning, I'd walk through those glass doors with a pit in my stomach, praying he wouldn't notice me, praying I could make it through the day without becoming his target. But he always noticed. One morning I arrived 5 minutes late because the train had stalled. I rushed to my desk, sweating, heart racing. But Leonard was already there, waiting, leaning against my chair like a vulture. "Late again, Daniel," he said, loud enough for the entire office to hear. "What happened this time? Did you need an extra donut to get yourself moving?" The laughter that followed was sharp and quick. My face flushed. I wanted to explain, but I knew it didn't matter. Leonard didn't care about explanations. He cared about the performance, the humiliation. "Sorry, sir," I muttered, slipping into my chair. "Sorry isn't enough," he snapped. "You'll stay late tonight to make up for it." I nodded. What else could I do? That evening, I stumbled home well past midnight. Michael was sitting at the kitchen table, his phone beside him, untouched dinner cold on the plate. He looked up when I came in, his jaw tight. "You're bleeding," he said. I touched my cheek and felt the sting. I hadn't even noticed. In my rush to leave, I'd nicked myself on a cabinet corner. "It's nothing," I said, brushing it off. Michael stood, walked over and grabbed my arm, not roughly but firmly enough to make me look at him. "It's not nothing. Look at you, Dad. You're breaking, and whoever's doing this to you is going to regret it." His words chilled me. They weren't said in anger. They were said with certainty, like a man stating a fact. I forced a smile and told him to let it go, but as he walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't going to. The next week, Leonard pushed harder. He made me redo an entire report 3 times, each time finding a new mistake. When I stayed late, he'd stand by my desk, arms crossed, watching me like a hawk. One night, he leaned in close and whispered, "You're pathetic, Daniel. Do you know that? You should have quit years ago. Nobody respects you, not even your own kid." The words hit like a punch. How did he know? Had my weakness been so obvious that even Leonard could see it? I went home that night and sat in the dark, staring at the wall. Michael came in around 2 in the morning, his shirt untucked, his eyes sharper than ever. He paused when he saw me. "Dad, you can't keep doing this," he said softly. "What choice do I have?" I muttered. "We need the money." "I can take care of us," he replied. His tone startled me. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a declaration. I frowned. "What do you mean by that?" "Just trust me." He walked past me into his room and closed the door. Trust him. 2 simple words, but they gnawed at me all night. Trust him to do what? The answer began to reveal itself in small, unsettling ways. The first sign came a few days later. Leonard was berating me in front of the team again, his voice sharp, his face red. "I don't know why I keep you here, Daniel. You drag everyone down. You're like dead weight tied around this company's neck." I swallowed the humiliation, as always, but that afternoon something strange happened. Leonard got a phone call. His face went pale. His voice, usually so loud and commanding, dropped to a nervous whisper. He glanced at me, then at the office door, and quickly excused himself. For the rest of the day, he barely looked at me. The change was so sudden, so unlike him, that even my co-workers noticed. "What happened to the boss?" one of them muttered. "He looks like he's seen a ghost." I tried not to think much of it, but when I came home that night, Michael was sitting on the couch, calm, almost smug. He didn't ask me how my day was. He didn't need to. The second sign was more obvious. A black car began appearing outside our apartment. It wasn't there every night, but often enough for me to notice. Sleek, tinted windows, engine idling quietly. Once, when I peered out, I thought I saw Michael in the passenger seat, deep in conversation with someone in a suit. By the time I blinked, the car was gone. I didn't ask. I was afraid of the answer. Then came the night everything changed. Leonard called me into his office late, after most of the staff had gone home. His voice was shaky, his hands restless as he shuffled papers on his desk. "Daniel," he began, avoiding my eyes. About what I said to you the other day. Forget it. I was out of line." I froze. "Leonard, apologizing?" He cleared his throat. You're a valued employee. Don't think otherwise." I didn't know what to say. For years, this man had done nothing but tear me down, and now suddenly he was speaking like he respected me. I left the office in a daze. That night, when I walked into our apartment, Michael was at the table, a faint smile on his face. "How was work?" he asked. "Strange," I admitted. "Leonard, apologize to me." Michael leaned back, folding his arms. "Sounds like he's learning some manners." There was something in his tone, too casual, too knowing, that made my stomach twist. "Michael," I said slowly, "what are you involved in?" He looked at me, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Conflict, maybe even guilt. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Don't worry about it, Dad," he said. "Just focus on your job. Things are going to get better for you." Better. The word echoed in my mind. Better because Leonard had suddenly changed, or better because my son had done something to make him change. I wanted to press him, to demand the truth. But I was afraid. Afraid of what I'd find out, afraid of what my son might have become. In the days that followed, Leonard's behavior toward me shifted completely. He still barked orders, but there was hesitation in his voice, like he was forcing himself. Sometimes he'd even avoid me altogether, delegating tasks to others. The man who had once reveled in humiliating me now seemed cautious, and then came the final sign, the one I couldn't ignore. One Friday evening, as I was leaving the office, Leonard approached me. His face was pale, his forehead damp with sweat. He leaned in close and whispered, "I don't know who your son is, but I'm not crossing him again. You understand?" My blood ran cold. I stared at him, too shocked to respond. But Leonard didn't wait for an answer. He just walked away, shoulders hunched, like a man carrying a burden too heavy for him. That night, when I got home, Michael was waiting for me. His jacket was draped over the chair, his sleeves rolled up, revealing faint bruises on his knuckles. "Rough night?" I asked, my voice unsteady. He shrugged. "Nothing I couldn't handle." And then he smiled, calm, confident, like he knew something I didn't. For the first time in my life, I realized the balance of power in my world had shifted. Leonard no longer terrified me, but the reason why terrified me even more, because my son, my only son, wasn't just protecting me. He was controlling the people who once controlled me, and I had no idea how deep that rabbit hole went. I couldn't shake Leonard's words from my mind. "I don't know who your son is, but I'm not crossing him again." He'd said it like a man confessing to a priest, whispering a truth he wished he could take back. It echoed in my head for days, gnawing at me. Every time I looked at Michael after that, I saw him differently. He was still my boy, but there was something else now, something sharp, dangerous, like a blade just beneath the surface. One evening, a week after Leonard's strange apology, I came home earlier than usual. Michael was in the living room with two men I had never seen before. They were dressed sharply, suits, polished shoes, watches that probably cost more than my car. They stood when I entered, not out of politeness, but like they were ready to defend themselves if needed. Michael gave them a nod, and just like that, their postures softened. They slipped past me with quick glances, murmuring, "Good evening," in voices that carried an edge I couldn't place. When the door shut, silence hung heavy between us. "Who were they?" I asked. "Friends," Michael said casually, but his tone was too smooth, too practiced. "Friends don't look like that," I replied, my voice firmer than I expected. He smirked faintly. "Depends on the kind of friends you keep." I wanted to push further, but something about his eyes, steady, unflinching, made me hesitate. For years I'd seen him as my little boy, fragile, in need of protection. Now it was the opposite. I felt like I was the one standing on unsteady ground, trying to understand who he had become. A few nights later, I woke up around 3 in the morning to the sound of voices, low, hushed, urgent. I crept down the hallway and stopped outside Michael's room. The door was cracked open just enough for me to see him sitting on the edge of his bed, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah," he said softly. "No, he won't be a problem anymore. If he tries again, make sure he remembers the warning. Nobody touches my family." Got it? My chest tightened. Nobody touches my family. The words should have comforted me, but instead they sent a chill down my spine. I stepped back, careful not to make a sound. For the first time, I wondered if the safety I felt around my son wasn't safety at all, but fear redirected, pointed outward at anyone who dared to cross me. The truth revealed itself in pieces after that, like a puzzle falling into place. First, there was the car. Not the black sedan I'd seen before, but a new one, sleek, foreign, expensive. It appeared one morning in our driveway, spotless, gleaming. Michael tossed me the keys as I sipped my coffee. "For you," he said. I stared at the keys in my hand, my stomach twisting. "Michael, where did this come from?" "Don't worry about it," he replied. "Just take it. You've earned it." "I can't," I said, pushing them back toward him. "I don't want anything I can't explain." His expression hardened. "You don't have to explain it. You just have to use it. For once in your life, Dad, let someone take care of you." His voice cracked with emotion, but behind it, there was steel. I took the keys, not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid of what refusing might mean to him. Then there was the envelope. I found it by accident one morning, when I went to grab a jacket from his room. It had slipped halfway out of his drawer, thick, stuffed with cash. More money than I'd seen in years. My hands trembled as I slid it back into place, praying he hadn't noticed me snooping. And finally, there was the night everything became undeniable. It was late. I had stayed at work longer than usual, avoiding home because I didn't know how to face Michael anymore. When I finally walked into our apartment, I heard laughter, low, deep, the kind of laughter that doesn't belong in a family home. 3 men sat at our dining table with Michael. They had drinks in front of them, cigars smouldering in an ashtray. The air was thick with smoke and tension. "Dad," Michael called, grinning as if nothing were unusual. "Come meet some friends." The men turned to look at me. Their eyes were sharp, calculating, predators measuring prey. One of them stood, extending a hand. His knuckles were scarred, his smile polite but cold. "Michael talks a lot about you," he said. I forced a smile, shook his hand, and quickly excused myself to my room. But as I closed the door, I heard one of them say, "He's a good man. You were right to protect him." Protect me. The words sent a shiver through me. That night sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled voices in the next room. Slowly, the truth crystallized. My son wasn't just making friends. He wasn't just finding a way to stand tall where I had bent. He was part of something far bigger, far darker. He had power, real power. The kind of power that made men like Leonard tremble. The kind of power that came with a price. The next day, Leonard called me into his office again. This time, he was almost polite. He asked about my workload, if I needed support, even offered me a coffee. It was surreal watching him fumble through kindness, his hands trembling slightly as he spoke. At one point, he leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Daniel," he said, "I don't want any trouble. You tell your son, you tell him I'll treat you right. Just don't let him think I've wronged you again." I stared at him, stunned. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," he muttered, eyes darting toward the window like someone might be watching. "Your son, he's not just some kid. I don't know who he is or who he works with, but I know enough to stay out of his way." My mouth went dry. I left his office without another word, my head spinning. That evening when I got home, Michael was waiting in the kitchen. He looked at me closely, like he could read my thoughts. "Rough day?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "Michael, what are you involved in?" For a long moment he didn't answer. His jaw worked, his eyes searching mine. Finally, he said quietly, "Things you don't need to worry about." "I do need to worry," I insisted. "I'm your father. If you're in trouble—" "I'm not in trouble," he cut me off sharply. "I am the trouble." The words hit like a slap. I stared at him, heart pounding. He didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't soften. He meant it. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Finally he stood, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Dad, listen to me," he said firmly. "You've spent your whole life letting men like Leonard push you around. That ends now. Nobody disrespects you anymore, not as long as I'm here." His grip was strong, steady, too strong. For the first time in my life, I realized my son wasn't just my son anymore. He was something more, and something far more dangerous. That night I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I should have felt relief. For years, I had endured humiliation, abuse, disrespect, and now suddenly it was gone. Leonard no longer dared to touch me. My co-workers looked at me differently, with a mix of respect and fear. My life was changing. But at what cost? Because deep down I knew the truth. I wasn't free. I had simply traded one kind of fear for another. Leonard no longer terrified me. Now it was my son who did. I had always thought the breaking point would come at work, that one day Leonard would push me too far and I'd finally snap. But I was wrong. The breaking point came when I realized I was no longer afraid of Leonard at all. I was afraid of my son. The tension in the office grew unbearable. Leonard still barked orders, but he no longer targeted me. His insults, his humiliations, were directed at others now. Whenever his eyes flicked to me, there was something new in them, something I'd never seen before. Fear, respect, maybe both. The other employees noticed too. Whispers spread. People wondered why Leonard suddenly treated me with kid gloves. Some suspected I had dirt on him. Others thought I had threatened to sue. No one guessed the truth. No one could have. At home, Michael's life became more and more opaque. He'd disappear for days at a time, return with bruised knuckles, expensive clothes, and that sharp, confident look in his eyes. The look of someone who had carved out power in a world most people never glimpsed. I tried to ask questions. He shut me down every time. "Dad, you don't need to know," he'd say. "You just need to trust me." But how could I trust what I didn't understand? The moment of truth came one Friday evening. I was about to leave work when Leonard called me into his office. His face was pale, his hands trembling. He motioned for me to close the door. "Daniel," he said, voice shaking, "I need you to talk to your son." My stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" "You know damn well what I'm talking about," he snapped, then immediately lowered his voice, glancing at the door. "I don't want trouble, I swear I don't. But he's been sending people, men. They come here, they talk to me. They don't threaten me, not directly, but I get the message. If I don't treat you right, if I don't keep my mouth shut, something will happen." His eyes were wide, frantic. "Daniel, I can't live like this. I need you to make him stop." I felt like the floor had dropped out beneath me. It was one thing to suspect, to piece together fragments. It was another thing to hear it spoken aloud. My son, my Michael, was pulling strings behind the scenes, bending Leonard to his will. "I didn't ask him to do anything," I said quietly. Leonard laughed bitterly. "Doesn't matter. He's doing it anyway, and now I'm the one living in fear." I left the office without another word, my head spinning. When I got home, Michael was waiting, as if he knew what had happened. He sat at the kitchen table, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "How was work?" he asked. I slammed my bag down. "What are you doing, Michael?" He didn't flinch. "Protecting you." "But you're protecting me," I repeated, my voice cracking. "Do you even hear yourself? You're terrorizing my boss, making him think his life's in danger. That's not protection. That's something else entirely." He leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. "Dad, that man humiliated you for years. He treated you like dirt. He made you believe you were worthless, and now he's scared of you. He'll never touch you again. Isn't that what you wanted?" Tears stung my eyes. Not from gratitude, but from anguish. "Michael, I wanted respect. I didn't want fear. There's a difference." He shook his head. "Respect is just fear in a nicer suit. People like Leonard only understand one language, and I speak it." The words chilled me. I looked at my son, my boy who I'd raised, who I'd sacrificed everything for, and I barely recognized him. "Michael," I whispered, "what have you become?" For the first time, his confidence wavered. His eyes softened, his jaw clenched. "I became what I had to, Dad. You think I wanted this? You think I grew up dreaming about power, about making people afraid of me? No, but I saw you. I saw the way you lived, the way people stepped on you, and I swore I'd never let that happen to me. Or to you." His voice broke on the last words. For a moment, he wasn't the hardened man sitting across from me. He was my little boy again, the one I'd tucked into bed at night, the one who used to cry when the world felt too big. I wanted to reach out, to hold him, to tell him he didn't have to carry this burden. But before I could, there was a knock at the door. Michael stood instantly, his posture rigid. He signaled for me to stay back and opened the door. Two men stood there, suits, polished shoes, that same quiet menace I'd seen before. They nodded at Michael. Then one of them glanced at me. "Everything's taken care of," he said. "Leonard won't be a problem anymore." My blood ran cold. Michael gave them a curt nod, exchanged a few words I couldn't hear, and shut the door. When he turned back to me, I was already trembling. "What does that mean?" I demanded. "What did you do?" "Nothing permanent," he said quickly. "Just a reminder. He won't cross you again." I staggered back, gripping the table for support. "Michael, this isn't protection. This is crime. This is violence. This is the mafia, isn't it?" Silence. He didn't confirm it, but he didn't deny it either. His silence was louder than any confession. I sank into a chair, my heart pounding. My son, my only son, was a criminal, a powerful one, the kind of man people feared. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would you do this to yourself?" "Because no one else would protect us," he said fiercely. "Because when Mom left, it was just you and me, and I watched you break yourself for me. I watched you let that man destroy you, day after day. I couldn't stand it, so I became someone who could stop it. Someone who could make sure no one ever treated us like that again." Tears streamed down my face. Pride and terror warred inside me. He had done it for me, for us. But at what cost? That night, I barely slept. The next morning, Leonard resigned. No explanation, no warning, just a letter on his desk and an empty office. The news spread like wildfire. My co-workers looked at me differently now, with a strange mixture of awe and caution. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was hollow. At home, Michael seemed almost relieved. He cooked dinner for us, joked like he used to, even asked about my day. But underneath it all was a current of tension, a reminder of the world he now lived in. As we sat at the table, I finally spoke. "Michael, I don't know if I can live like this." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to, that's the point. I'll live like this. You just live." I shook my head. "You don't understand. Every time I look at you, I see the boy I raised, the boy I promised to protect, and now you're the one protecting me, but in a way that terrifies me. I don't want to lose you." For the first time in years, Michael reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was strong, steady. "You won't lose me, Dad," he said softly. "I promise." But deep down, I knew promises were fragile things. In the weeks that followed, my life changed in ways I never imagined. No one disrespected me anymore. No one laughed at me or humiliated me, but everywhere I went, I carried the weight of the truth. My respect had been bought with fear. My safety had been built on violence. And my son, the boy I loved more than anything, had become both my savior and my greatest fear. I sit here now, telling this story, not to glorify it, not to excuse it, but to face it. To admit that sometimes the people we love most change in ways we can't control. Sometimes they become protectors, sometimes they become something darker, and sometimes they're both. All I know is this: I would give anything to see my son free of the life he chose, but I also know I can never undo what's been done. So I hold on to the only truth I have left. He did it for me, out of love, out of loyalty, out of the bond between a father and a son, and even in the darkest places, maybe that's the only light we get. After Leonard's resignation, things didn't just change, they flipped upside down. For the first time in years, I walked into the office without a knot in my stomach. My co-workers greeted me differently now, their eyes darting away in quick respect. No jokes whispered behind my back, no snide remarks about being Leonard's punching bag. It was as if overnight I had stepped into a role I didn't audition for. And yet every polite nod, every deferential glance only reminded me of the truth. They weren't respecting me. They were respecting the invisible shadow of my son. "Morning, Daniel," Susan the secretary said one day, her smile strained too wide. "Coffee's fresh. Want me to grab you a cup?" She had never offered that before. She'd barely acknowledged me unless Leonard barked for a report. I thanked her and sat down, but her kindness felt like a weight on my shoulders instead of a gift. At lunch, a younger co-worker named Tim leaned over. "Hey, Daniel, can I ask you something?" I looked up from my sandwich. "Sure. What's your secret? I mean, Leonard's gone. Nobody knows why. You walk in here now and it's like the whole place is different. Did you do something?" I laughed nervously. "Do something? What do you mean?" He lowered his voice. "Look, I don't want to sound crazy, but did you have help? I've heard rumors. People say, well, they say someone's protecting you." My heart pounded in my chest. "Rumors are just rumors, Tim. Don't believe everything you hear." But even as the words left my lips, I saw the doubt in his eyes. At home, Michael noticed my unease. One night after dinner, he leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You're quieter than usual. Work getting to you?" I shook my head. "It's not work. It's... Michael, people are starting to ask questions. They're suspicious." He smirked. "Let them be suspicious. Suspicion keeps them away. It keeps them respectful." "But it also draws attention," I argued. "If people start connecting dots..." "They won't," he interrupted firmly. "Trust me. I know how to make sure of that." His confidence should have reassured me. Instead, it terrified me. A few days later, that terror became reality. I was at home when there was another knock at the door. Not Michael's men this time, not neighbors. 2 men in suits. But these weren't the polished, quiet enforcers I'd seen before. These were government issue. "Mr. Daniels?" the taller one asked, flashing a badge. "FBI." My throat went dry. "Yes? We'd like to ask you a few questions about your son, Michael." My mind screamed, "Don't let them in." But my mouth betrayed me. "Of course." They stepped inside, polite but sharp-eyed. Every glance swept the room, cataloguing details. The shorter agent pulled out a notepad. "How long has your son lived here with you?" "His whole life," I said carefully. "And what does he do for a living?" I hesitated. "Business." "What kind of business?" I forced a smile. "You'd have to ask him. He doesn't tell me much." They exchanged a glance. The taller one leaned forward. "Mr. Daniels, we know your son is involved with certain groups. Dangerous groups. We're not here to hurt you. We just want to understand what you know. Has he ever mentioned people named Vescari or DeLuca?" My blood turned to ice. I shook my head quickly. "No, he's never mentioned those names. Look, Michael, he's a good kid. He takes care of me. Works hard. That's all I know." They didn't believe me. I could see it in their eyes. But they didn't press further. They left me with a card. "If you think of anything, call us. It could help him. And you." When the door shut, I collapsed against it, shaking. My son wasn't just dabbling in crime. He was in deep enough that the FBI knew his name. That night when Michael came home, I confronted him. "Michael, the FBI came today." He froze, mid-step. Slowly he turned to face me. His expression hardened, that mask he wore when he didn't want me to see what was underneath. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," I said, "that I don't know anything." He relaxed slightly, but the tension didn't fully leave his body. "Good. Don't ever say more than that." I slammed my hand on the table. "Michael, this isn't a game. The FBI, do you understand what that means? They're watching you. They're watching us. How long do you think you can keep this up before something happens?" He walked closer, his voice low but fierce. "As long as it takes. Dad, I told you. I'll protect you. Nothing touches you. Not Leonard. Not anyone. Not even the feds." I stared at him, my chest tight. And who protects you? For a moment something flickered in his eyes. Vulnerability, weariness. I don't need protection. But I could see the cracks, the late nights, the bruises, the exhaustion he tried to hide. He wasn't invincible, no matter how much he wanted me to believe it. Days turned into weeks and the pressure only mounted. At work, people treated me like some untouchable figure, but I felt like a fraud. At home, I watched my son slip further into a world I couldn't reach. And at night I lay awake, haunted by one question: how long before everything collapsed? One evening I found Michael sitting alone on the porch, staring at the street. A cigarette burned between his fingers, the smoke curling in the cool air. I hadn't seen him smoke in years. "Rough day?" I asked gently. He didn't look at me. "You could say that." I sat beside him. For a long time we just listened to the hum of the city. Finally, he spoke. "You ever feel like you're carrying something too heavy, but if you drop it, everything falls apart?" I swallowed hard. "Every day, Michael, every single day." He glanced at me then, and for once there was no mask, no bravado, just my son, tired and hurting. "I didn't want this life," he whispered, "but once you're in, you don't walk away. You either carry it, or it crushes you." I wanted to tell him to run, to leave it all behind, but I knew he couldn't. Not anymore. The hooks were too deep. So instead I put my hand on his shoulder. "Then let me carry some of it with you." He laughed softly, bitterly. "You don't want to carry this, Dad. Trust me." But as we sat there in silence, I realized something terrifying. Whether I wanted to or not, I already was. The first time I realized Michael had enemies, real enemies, was on a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from work, exhausted, when I noticed the front gate slightly ajar. We never left it open. "Michael," I called, stepping inside cautiously. He appeared almost instantly, his expression sharp, his hand tucked under his jacket. He relaxed only when he saw me. "Dad, you need to start being more careful," he said. "Careful?" I asked. "What's going on?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he checked the locks on the doors, closed the blinds, scanned the street. Only after he was satisfied did he finally look at me. "Someone was here," he admitted. "Not the feds. Someone else." "Who?" "People who don't like me. Rivals, competitors. Call them what you want." His jaw tightened. "They wanted to send a message." Fear surged through me. "Michael, this house, it's not just your home, it's mine too. If they're coming here—" "They won't," he cut me off firmly. "Not again, I'll make sure of it." But his reassurance didn't ease the terror gnawing at my chest. Because if Michael had enemies powerful enough to leave warnings at our doorstep, then sooner or later, one of those warnings would turn into something worse. That night, I barely slept. Every noise outside made me jump. Every shadow seemed like a threat. I kept replaying the FBI visit, Leonard's pale face, and now this. Phantom enemies circling our lives like vultures. The next morning at work, I thought I could escape it, but the whispers followed me there too. "Heard his kid's in some serious business," one co-worker muttered when they thought I couldn't hear. "Yeah, no wonder Leonard quit. Probably scared for his life," another replied. I gripped my coffee cup so tightly I thought it would shatter. My private nightmare was leaking into the world, infecting every corner of my life. When I got home that evening, Michael was waiting. He had a bruise on his cheek, faint but visible. "What happened?" I demanded. "Nothing," he said, brushing it off. "Don't you lie to me," I snapped. "Who did this to you?" He hesitated, then sighed. A reminder, one of DeLuca's men. The name sent a chill down my spine. It was the same one the FBI agent had mentioned. "What do they want?" I asked. He smirked bitterly. "What everyone wants. Power, territory, control. They think they can scare me. They don't realize I'm not the one who breaks." My voice shook. "Michael, this is going to kill you." He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment the hardness in his eyes faltered. "I'm not afraid of dying, Dad. I'm afraid of leaving you alone." The words cut me deeper than any knife. Later that week, the threat escalated. We were eating dinner when the sound of glass shattering echoed through the living room. Michael leapt to his feet, gun in hand, before I even registered what was happening. A brick had crashed through the window, wrapped in a note. Michael read it silently, then crumpled it in his fist. "What did it say?" I asked, my voice trembling. He met my gaze. It said, "Next time, it won't be a warning." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Michael, they know where we live. They know us. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about both of us." He paced the room, restless energy radiating off him. "I'll handle it. I promise you, Dad, no one is going to touch you." "But they already have," I shouted. "Look around, Michael, our home, our lives, they're not safe. You say you're protecting me, but what happens when I'm caught in the crossfire?" For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Not fear for himself, fear for me. "I'll move you," he said quickly. "Somewhere safe, somewhere no one can touch you." I shook my head. "I won't run from my own life, and I won't hide from the truth either." He froze, then lowered his head. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Then the truth is this. I can't get out, Dad, not now, maybe not ever, but I swear to you, as long as I'm breathing, I'll stand between you and them." It should have comforted me, but instead it broke my heart. Because standing between me and them meant taking every hit, every bullet, every risk, and no father wants to see his son walk that path. The next day, I found myself staring at the FBI agent's card again. It sat on the counter, mocking me. If I called, maybe they could pull him out, maybe they could save him. But calling also meant betraying him, handing him over to people who didn't see the boy I raised, only the criminal he had become. That night, I confronted him once more. "Michael," I began, voice heavy, "what if I could get you out of all of this, a chance to start over?" He laughed, sharp and humorless. "There's no starting over in this world. You don't just quit. You either climb to the top or you get buried." "Then what's the end game?" I asked desperately. "What do you see for yourself? 5 years from now, 10? Do you see yourself alive?" His silence was answer enough. I felt the tears rising, but I forced them back. "I just want my son back," I whispered. And for the briefest moment I thought I saw him crack. His shoulders slumped, his eyes glistened. He looked like the boy I remembered, the one who used to draw superheroes at the kitchen table and ask me if I thought he could be one someday. "I'm still here, Dad," he said softly. "You just don't always recognize me." We sat there, staring at each other across the table, two men trapped by choices neither of us had wanted. Him by the power he had seized. Me by the love I couldn't let go of. And as the night stretched on, I realized something chilling. Enemies weren't just coming for him anymore. They were coming for us both. And sooner or later, we'd have to face them together. The night it all came crashing down started quietly. Too quietly. Michael had left earlier, saying he had business to handle. He didn't tell me what kind, but I could read the exhaustion in his face, the weight on his shoulders. He promised he'd be back before midnight. I stayed awake, waiting. By 11, I was pacing the living room. By midnight, I was staring out the window, my heart in my throat. By 1, I was sure something had gone wrong. Then I heard it, the sound of tires screeching outside. Headlights washed over the front yard, and before I could move, the door burst open. Not Michael. 3 men I didn't recognize. Suits, cold eyes, guns drawn. "Mr. Daniels?" one of them asked, though it wasn't really a question. I froze, my hands trembling. "Who are you?" "Associates of DeLuca," the man replied calmly. "Your son has caused some problems, and unfortunately when he doesn't listen, we have to get creative." My blood ran cold. "Please, don't hurt me. You don't have to involve me." "On the contrary," he said, stepping closer. Family is leverage, and leverage gets results. Before I could react, rough hands grabbed my arms, shoving me into a chair. Duct tape bound my wrists. One man paced while the other two loomed over me. "You're going to give Michael a message," the leader said, pulling out a phone. He dialed, put it on speaker, and set it on the table in front of me. It rang once, twice, then his voice steady as ever. "Michael." The leader smirked. "We have your father." Silence, deadly silence. Then Michael's voice, low and dangerous. "If you touch him, you're dead." The man chuckled. "Big words, but let's be clear, we're not unreasonable. You've been stepping into territory that isn't yours. That ends tonight. Either you back down or your father pays the price." I tried to speak, to beg, but the leader pressed a finger to his lips. Michael's voice came again, colder than I'd ever heard. "Put my father on." They shoved the phone in front of me. My hands shook as I spoke. "Michael, don't do anything, please. Whatever they want, just do it." There was a pause, then his tone softened. "Dad, I told you. No one touches you." The line went dead. The leader frowned. He hung up. Suddenly there was a sound outside. Engines, doors slamming, footsteps. The men exchanged uneasy glances. One rushed to the window. His face went pale. "It's him." Chaos erupted. The front door burst open again. And there he was, Michael, flanked by two of his own men. Guns were drawn, voices shouted, and before I could comprehend it, the living room exploded into violence. Shots rang out, shouts filled the air. I ducked, heart hammering, as bodies moved like shadows around me. The rival men fought hard, but Michael's fury was unmatched. Within minutes, two lay disarmed on the floor, groaning, and the third had a gun pressed to his temple. Michael's hand steady, his eyes blazing. "You think you can walk into my home?" Michael snarled. "Threaten my father?" The man stammered, sweat dripping down his face. We were just sending a message." Michael pressed the barrel harder. "Message received." "Michael!" I shouted, my voice breaking. "Stop! Please, don't kill him!" His chest heaved, his finger tightening on the trigger. For a moment I was sure he would do it, but then his eyes flicked to me, tied, terrified, trembling, and something shifted. With a curse, he shoved the man away. "Get out," he spat, "and tell DeLuca he just declared war." The men scrambled out, dragging their wounded with them. The house was left in shambles, broken glass, overturned furniture, the smell of gunpowder thick in the air. Michael dropped the gun, rushing to me. He tore the tape from my wrists and pulled me into his arms. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" I clung to him, shaking uncontrollably. "Michael, what was that? What are you doing to us?" His grip tightened. "I'm sorry, Dad. I never wanted this to touch you, but they crossed a line tonight. And now, I can't back down." Tears blurred my vision. "This is madness. They'll keep coming. They'll never stop until one of you is dead." He pulled back, his eyes burning with resolve. "Then I'll make sure it isn't me." The next few days were a blur. Michael doubled his security, men stationed outside the house, cars following us wherever we went. At work, co-workers whispered more than ever, their eyes wide when they saw the black SUVs idling nearby. I felt like a prisoner in my own life, watched from all sides. And yet in the midst of all this chaos, Michael was more present with me than he had been in years. He cooked dinner, sat with me on the porch, even asked about my childhood stories like he wanted to remember the simpler days. One evening I asked him, "Why do you keep doing this, Michael? Why not just walk away?" He looked at me, weary but determined. "Because if I walk away, they'll see it as weakness. And weakness is blood in the water. They won't stop. They'll come for me. For you. The only way to keep you safe is to stand my ground." I shook my head, tears spilling. "Safe? Do you hear yourself? You call this safe?" He didn't answer. He just stared into the distance, his jaw tight. That night, I dreamt of the boy he used to be. The boy who built Lego towers in the living room, who asked me to read him bedtime stories, who once told me he wanted to grow up to be a hero. Now he was a man with blood on his hands, a man people feared, a man at war. And somehow, impossibly, he was still trying to be my hero. But as I lay awake, listening to the hum of the cars outside, one thought haunted me. Heroes don't always live to see the ending. I thought the worst was over after that night. I was wrong. If anything, it was only the beginning. The morning after the break-in, Michael sat across from me at the kitchen table. He hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands restless, tapping against his coffee mug like a ticking clock. "They crossed the line, Dad," he said finally. "They brought the fight into our home, into your life. I can't let that stand." "Michael, please," I whispered. "Enough blood has been spilled. Can't you talk to them? Find some way to end this without war." He shook his head. "You don't negotiate with men like DeLuca. Every word is a trap. The only language he understands is strength. If I let this go, he'll think I'm weak, and weakness gets us both killed." I stared at him, feeling a chill crawl down my spine. He wasn't exaggerating. He believed every word, and deep down I feared he was right. That night I saw him in his element for the first time. He brought me with him to a warehouse on the edge of the city, his safe place. It looked abandoned from the outside, but the moment we stepped in, I realized it was anything but. Dozens of men moved with precision, checking weapons, loading crates, speaking in low, urgent voices. At the center of it all was Michael. The moment he entered, the room shifted. Conversations hushed, men straightened, all eyes turned to him. My son, my flesh and blood, commanded them with a nod, a gesture, a glance. "DeLuca thinks he can threaten my family," he said, his voice cutting through the air like steel. "He thinks I'll back down, but he's wrong. Tonight we show him what happens when you put your hands where they don't belong." The men cheered, pounding their fists against the tables, shouting his name. Michael raised his hand, silencing them instantly. "This isn't about revenge. This is about respect. And if we don't take it back, we lose everything." As I stood there, hidden in the back, I realized something terrifying. These men didn't just follow him, they believed in him. He wasn't just my son anymore. He was their leader, their general, their king. I wanted to run, to go back to my quiet house, to forget everything I had seen. But then Michael's eyes found mine across the room, and in that moment, I understood why he brought me there. He wanted me to see who he really was. He wanted me to understand the world he lived in. Later that night, the plan went into motion. I wasn't supposed to go, but Michael insisted I stay close. "You're safer with me than alone," he said. So I rode in the black SUV, my heart pounding as we cut through the city streets. We stopped outside one of DeLuca's clubs. Neon lights flickered, music pulsed from inside, but I knew nothing good waited there. Michael and his men moved like shadows, slipping inside. I stayed behind, watching from the car, my palms sweating. Through the tinted glass I caught glimpses, men being dragged out, shouts muffled by the bass, fists flying. Then gunfire, short, sharp bursts that made my whole body jolt. The chaos was overwhelming, and every second I waited felt like an eternity. When the doors finally burst open again, Michael emerged, calm, unshaken. His men followed, dragging two of DeLuca's enforcers with them. They were beaten, bloodied, barely conscious. Michael leaned into the car and looked at me. "Let's go," he said, his voice even as if he hadn't just orchestrated a battlefield inside. We drove back to the warehouse. The prisoners were thrown to the ground, moaning in pain. Michael crouched in front of them, his face unreadable. "You walked into my house," he said softly. "You threatened my father. Tell DeLuca this ends now, or next time I won't stop at broken bones." The men nodded frantically, their fear palpable. Michael signaled, and they were dragged out like garbage. I couldn't take it anymore. When the room cleared, I grabbed his arm. "Michael, what are you doing? This isn't you. You're not a monster." He turned to me, his eyes dark, his jaw tight. A monster? No, Dad. I'm the one keeping monsters away from our door. Don't you get it? If I don't fight, we lose everything. You lose me. I wanted to argue, to scream, to make him see how far he'd gone. But the words died in my throat. Because for the first time, I realized he wasn't asking for my approval. He was asking for my understanding. The days blurred into weeks. The war between Michael and DeLuca escalated. Clubs were raided, shipments intercepted, men vanished into the night. The news whispered of gang violence in the city, but no one dared say names. Meanwhile, my life became unrecognizable. I couldn't go to work without a car trailing me. Neighbors whispered about the SUVs parked outside my house. Friends stopped calling. I felt isolated, trapped in a cage built from fear and loyalty. But Michael was always there. He checked on me constantly, sat with me during meals, even laughed at my old jokes like he used to when he was a boy. In those rare, quiet moments, I saw glimpses of the son I raised. And that was what broke me the most, knowing that beneath the armor, he was still my son. One evening, as we sat together on the porch, I asked him something that had been eating at me. Michael, do you ever regret it? The life you chose? He was silent for a long time, staring out at the darkening sky. Then he said, every day. But regret doesn't change the past. All I can do now is protect the future. And for me, that means protecting you. His words pierced me. I wanted to hate what he had become, but how could I? Everything he did, every brutal act, every risk, was rooted in love, twisted by violence. And yet, I knew this couldn't last. Sooner or later, the war would demand a price, and I feared that price would be him. I'd always thought I knew fear, fear of losing my job, fear of never being enough, fear of watching my life slip through my fingers. But the fear I felt in those weeks was something else entirely. It was the kind of fear that lived in your bones, that clung to you when you tried to sleep, that made you jump at every noise in the dark. Michael had declared war on DeLuca, and there was no turning back. Every night I heard the phone ring, short calls in hushed tones, followed by Michael rushing out the door. Sometimes he came back with his knuckles raw and blood staining his shirt. Sometimes he came back quiet, too quiet, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. And sometimes he didn't come back at all until dawn, reeking of smoke and danger. I tried to ask him, tried to make him stop. But every time I did, he looked at me with that same haunted determination. Dad, if I stop now, it all falls apart. They'll come for us, for you. One night, everything changed. I woke to the sound of shattering glass. My heart leapt into my throat as I rushed downstairs. The front window was broken, shards scattered across the floor. In the center of the living room lay a brick wrapped in paper. My hands shook as I unwrapped it. Scrawled in black ink across the crumpled page were 4 words. You will pay next. Before I could even process it, Michael stormed in from the kitchen, his gun already drawn. He grabbed the note from my hand, his jaw tightening. This is DeLuca, he growled. He's making it personal. Michael, call the police, I pleaded. This is too far. Let them handle it. He turned to me, his eyes blazing with a fire that made me step back. The police! Dad, the police don't fight men like DeLuca. They bury the bodies after. Do you understand? It's me or him, and I won't let it be me. For the first time, I saw it, death in his eyes. Not his death, but DeLuca's. Michael wasn't just protecting me anymore. He was preparing to end it no matter the cost. The days that followed were chaos. I was moved from place to place, hidden in safe houses with guards outside the doors. I felt like a prisoner, suffocated by the life my son had dragged me into. And yet, every time he visited, every time he touched my shoulder and said, "Just a little longer, Dad," I couldn't bring myself to abandon him. Then came the night that shattered everything. We were at the warehouse when one of Michael's men burst in, breathless. "Boss, we've got word. DeLuca's planning a strike tonight, big one. He's coming for you." The room tensed. Guns were loaded, men barked orders. Michael stood in the center, calm as stone. "Where?" he asked. "Dock 17, midnight." Michael nodded. "Then that's where it ends." I grabbed his arm, desperate. "Michael, no, don't go. This isn't a game. You could die." He turned to me, his face softening for just a moment. "Dad, if I don't go, they'll keep coming. And one day it won't be me they take. It'll be you." His words sliced through me. He kissed my forehead like he used to when he was a boy and whispered, "Trust me." Then he was gone. I don't know what possessed me, but I couldn't let him face it alone. I found a way into one of the SUVs, crouching low in the back seat. The convoy roared through the night, headlights cutting across the empty streets until we reached the docks. The air smelled of salt and gasoline. Shadows loomed between the shipping containers, and every step echoed like a gunshot. Michael's men spread out, weapons ready. Then, out of the darkness, DeLuca appeared, surrounded by his own soldiers, smug and fearless. His voice carried across the cold night air. "Michael Romano," he sneered, "the boy who thinks he's a man. You should have stayed in your corner, but now I'll bury you and your pathetic old man." Michael's jaw clenched. "You made the mistake of touching my family. That's a line you don't cross." And then all hell broke loose. Gunfire exploded, echoing across the docks. Men shouted, the clash of war surrounding me. I ducked behind a crate, heart hammering as bullets splintered the wood inches from my head. The world was chaos. Flashes of light, screams of pain, the metallic scent of blood in the air. Through it all, I saw Michael. He moved like a predator, precise and unrelenting. His gun barked, his fists flew, and everywhere he turned, enemies fell. But DeLuca was nowhere to be seen. I crawled from my hiding place, desperate to find my son. That's when I heard it, a scuffle close by. I turned a corner and froze. Michael and DeLuca stood face to face, locked in brutal combat. No guns now, just fists and fury. DeLuca was bigger, older, but Michael was faster, sharper, every strike fueled by rage. "Your father's nothing," DeLuca spat as he swung. "You'll die for him like the coward he is," Michael roared, slamming his fist into DeLuca's jaw. "That coward is the only reason I fight. He's the only reason I breathe." The words hit me harder than any bullet. My son wasn't fighting for power. He wasn't fighting for money. He was fighting for me. But DeLuca wasn't done. With a surge of strength, he pulled a knife from his belt and lunged. Time seemed to slow. I screamed, powerless, as the blade arced toward my son's chest. Michael twisted, the knife grazing his side instead of piercing his heart. He grabbed DeLuca's wrist, forcing the blade back, closer and closer until the sound was sickening. DeLuca's eyes went wide, his mouth opening in a silent gasp as his own knife buried deep in his stomach. Michael held him there, breathing hard, before shoving him back. DeLuca collapsed to the ground, the life draining from his eyes. Silence fell. The gunfire faded. DeLuca's men scattered, their courage gone, and just like that it was over. I rushed to Michael, my hands trembling as I touched the blood on his side. "You're hurt. God, Michael, you're hurt." He winced, but managed to smile. "It's nothing. I'm fine." But as I looked into his eyes, I knew it wasn't nothing. Not the wound, not the war, not the life he had chosen. And for the first time, I wondered if winning had cost him more than he could ever get back. When the gunfire ended, the world fell into a silence so heavy it felt like it could crush me. The docks were littered with shell casings, broken crates, and bodies that would never rise again. The air smelled of salt, smoke, and blood. But all I could see was Michael, my son, standing there with DeLuca's lifeless body at his feet. For a moment, he wasn't the mafia boss. He wasn't the feared leader his men worshipped. He was just my boy again, the little boy who used to run down the stairs with a toy car in his hand, asking me to play. but he was bleeding. I rushed to his side, gripping his arm, my hands trembling. "Michael, we need to get you to a hospital. You're losing too much blood." He winced but pulled away, his jaw set. "No hospitals, too many questions." "Then where?" I asked, panic clawing at my throat. "Trust me," he said, his voice calm despite the crimson stains spreading across his shirt. He signaled to his men, and they moved quickly, wrapping his wound, guiding him back to the SUV. I followed, numb, my mind a blur. The drive back was quiet. His men murmured to each other in low voices, but all I could hear was Michael's ragged breathing. Every bump in the road made me flinch. Every glance at his pale face made my chest tighten. Back at the warehouse, they laid him on a makeshift cot. A man I hadn't seen before, a doctor clearly on Michael's payroll, appeared, working quickly, stitching the wound with practiced precision. I stood nearby, useless, helpless, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Finally, the doctor straightened. "He'll live," he said. Relief washed over me so hard my knees nearly gave out. I sat by Michael's side, watching him sleep. Hours passed, maybe days. I lost track. When he finally stirred, his eyes fluttering open, I grabbed his hand. "You scared me half to death," I whispered. He gave me a tired smile. "Sorry, Dad. Guess I've been doing that a lot lately." I wanted to be angry with him. I wanted to shout, to tell him how much he had hurt me, how much this life had stolen from both of us. But instead, I found myself saying, "You didn't have to do this for me, not like this." His smile faded. He turned his head, staring at the ceiling. "You don't understand. You've always seen me as your son. But to men like DeLuca, I was nothing. Weak, soft. I had to prove them wrong. I had to prove I could protect you, that I wasn't a disappointment." The word sliced through me like a knife. Disappointment. How long had he carried that weight? How long had he believed I saw him that way? "Michael," I said, my voice breaking, "you've never been a disappointment to me. Never. I don't care about power or respect or what those men think. You've always been enough. Always." His eyes flicked to mine, glistening. For the first time in years, I saw not the hardened boss, not the feared leader, but the boy who just wanted his father's approval. "Then why didn't you say it before?" he whispered. My throat tightened, "Because I thought you already knew." Tears slipped down his cheeks, and I reached for him, pulling him into my arms. For a long time we just held each other, father and son, broken and mended all at once. But even in that moment, reality pressed in. DeLuca was gone, but Michael's war wasn't. There would always be another rival, another threat, another night filled with blood and shadows. I knew it, and so did he. The weeks after DeLuca's death were a blur. The city buzzed with rumors. Some said DeLuca had vanished, others whispered he'd been killed, though no one dared say by whom. Michael's grip on power tightened, his reputation solidified. To his men, he was invincible. But to me, he was still my son. And I worried every day that I'd lose him to the world he had built. One evening, we sat together on the porch again, just like we used to. The air was warm, crickets chirping in the distance. Michael lit a cigarette, the glow illuminating his face. "Dad," he said quietly, "do you ever wish I'd lived a different life?" The question cut me deep. I looked at him, at the scars on his face, the weight in his eyes, and I thought of all the nights I lay awake, praying he'd walk a safer path. "Yes," I admitted softly, "every day. But I also know this, you've become the man you thought you needed to be. And no matter what, you're still my son. I love you, Michael. Nothing will ever change that." He exhaled smoke, staring into the night. "I don't know how this ends, Dad. Men like me, we don't retire. We don't get happy endings." I reached over, gripping his hand. "Maybe not. But maybe you can still choose who you are in the moments that matter. Maybe that's enough." For a long time he didn't answer. Then he squeezed my hand back, and that was all I needed. The war was over, but the battle inside us remained. For him, it was the struggle to hold on to the boy he used to be. For me, it was the struggle to accept the man he had become. And maybe in the end that was the real story, not of violence or vengeance, but of love. A father's love for his son, and a son's desperate need to protect the only family he had left. If there's anything I've learned from all of this, it's that life is messy, family is complicated. Sometimes love doesn't look like what we expect. It's flawed, it's painful, it's terrifying, but it's still love. And that love is worth fighting for, even when the world tells you otherwise. So if you're listening to my story, take this with you. Never wait to tell someone you love them. Never assume they already know. Because you never know when the next breath, the next moment could be the last. And if my son has taught me anything, it's this. Sometimes the people who walk the darkest paths still carry the brightest lights inside them. They just need someone to remind them it's there. That's my story. Thank you for being here, for listening. If it moved you, if it made you think, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes stories like mine aren't just stories. They're reminders that no matter how dark life gets, there's always a reason to hold on.